UFC 271 is almost here. I'm going to give you my final picks. We're going to build some lineups, and I had a few of you send me some props that you hit on last week, so I'm going to give you some of those as well. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't already, go back and watch the first look and full card breakdown from earlier in the week. That's where we talk about the slate fighter by fighter, salary by salary, and we talk about spots that we like and spots that we don't like. For this video, we're going to talk about strategy, lineup construction, and what we need to do to be successful. And if you've been enjoying the content at all, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. A lot goes into these videos. It takes a lot of time for them to look the way they do, sound the way they do. So just toss a coin to your Witcher, you know what I mean? Now, we have 15 fights on this card, so it's going to be real easy for us to get different. But the pricing is tight. I've been building lineups all week, and I can tell you that it's been extremely tough. And the reason why I say it's tough is because the options listed above 9,000, I expect them all to win and most of them to score a decent amount of points, but unfortunately, we might not be able to play them. If I had to choose one fighter in this range, it would probably be Ronnie Lawrence because of the wrestling. He could post well over 100 DraftKings points, just like he did in his last fight. But consider this, if he scores 135 points, does that mean that he shows up on the optimal lineup? Not necessarily. Say he scores that many points. Say he scores around 135. But because he's so expensive, you're forced to play somebody like Fabio Cherant at 7,300. And I have no interest in playing Fabio Cherant this week. He looks like off-brand DaBaby. He looks like the infant. And let's say you had to go even deeper in the salary and end up playing somebody like Marcelo Rojo. Not a great matchup for Marcelo Rojo. And again, if you're at a situation where he scores 6 points in a loss, or Fabio Cherant scores 8 points in a loss, then you've lost. So Ronnie Lawrence's performance doesn't matter if you're not able to get 6 winning fighters in your lineup. With 15 fights, you're going to need 6 winners, or you lose anyway. You might cash depending on the tournament you're playing, but you're looking to take down first, you're going to need 6 winning fighters in your lineup. And this situation is going to be the case with the expensive fighters this week. And of course, there could be a low-priced underdog that completely breaks the slate. But if we're looking at stylistic matchups and likely outcomes, a lot of the favorites are going to win on Saturday night. But there are some value plays at 8,000 and below that can help you keep your salary in check when you're building lineups this week. First, I think we need to look closer at Jacob Malkoun. Given the way that the pricing is on this card and how good the favorites look, there isn't a ton of value. So this fight with Malkoun and Dobson is going to be life or death. I say that because the winning lineup in your contest is going to have the winner of this fight. I can promise you that. Both these guys have clear paths to victory. AJ Dobson can end the fight early because he throws bombs on the feet. He's very fast, and if he wins, probably a first round knockout. But if Malkoun wins, he probably scores a lot of points because he's securing takedowns and control time. Earlier in the week, I did say Dobson by knockout, but after looking at this, I like Jacob Malkoun. And I like Malkoun for a few reasons. First, he's got good UFC experience under his belt. Yes, he got knocked out quickly by Phil Hawes, but you learn from something like that. And then he got to fight for 15 whole minutes against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and he got some real good cage time in. Second is he's fighting at middleweight. He trains with Robert Whittaker, which is important here. And normally I don't put a whole lot of stock into where people are training because at the end of the day, your training partners can't fight for you. But I think it's important because Dobson is training out of Ohio at Matt Brown's gym. So who do you think's getting better reps, Jacob Malkoun or Dobson? I'm going to think Malkoun. If he's training with one of the pound-for-pound best fighters the division has ever seen on a day-in, day-out basis, then he's probably getting better at a much faster rate than I would assume AJ Dobson is. Dobson is a big, muscular guy, and sometimes guys that are built like this don't have the best gas tank, and we really don't know what his gas tank is like because he's only gone the distance once, and it was against this guy. Couple that with the debut jitters, and it's totally possible that he can end up gassing out by the end of the first round, and if that's the case, Jacob Malkoun will break the slate at 8,000. But 8,000, this is my hard lean. I recommend playing Jacob Malkoun. I will have him in my single entry. I understand that AJ Dobson could totally go out there and knock him out, but I'm going to go with the grappling, with the experience, better training, and I think all roads lead to Jacob Malkoun this week. At 7,900, Vanderaa looks like a great play. I expect him to be massively under-owned on this slate. So many people think this is the kind of guy Arvloski just picks apart, but I challenge that thinking because if you've looked at Arlovski's fights, win or lose, his opponents really haven't put much of a pace on him. If you look at some of the people that Arvloski has fought in the last couple of years, you got Carlos Felipe, 73 strikes, Chase Sherman, 88, Tom Aspinall finished him in the second, then you've got Tanner Boser at 68, Felipe Lins at 41, Rosenstruik KOs him right away, Ben Rothwell throws 70 punches, Augusto Sakai beats him with 42 strikes. No contest with Walt Harris, 24 strikes. Shamil Abdurakhimov, he landed 32 strikes. Tai Tuivasa, 54 strikes. Stefan Struve, 34. Junior Albini, 48. Marcin Tybura, 51. You get what I'm saying? If Vanderaa comes out here and lands 121 strikes and throws 150 of them, he's not only going to win this fight, but he's going to score a lot of points. And if he's landing that many strikes on the 43-year-old Andrei Arvloski, he's going to knock him out. I think people are sleeping way too hard on Vanderaa this week, and at 7,900, I'm continuously putting him in my lineups. At this price, lower ownership, and one of the better matchups on the card, I like Vanderaa this week. At 7,600, Derrick Brunson looks like a solid play. I expect a good amount of people to play him this week. The underdogs in this card don't look promising, and Brunson has been on a hot streak. He's also posted good DraftKings scores in these fights because of his wrestling. The question is, can he take Cannonier down? And I think that he can. I think he not only can get him down, but I think he can remat him as well. Cannonier is very strong and experienced, so I expect him to be able to work his way up to his feet pretty easily. But I just see Blonde Brunson maintaining the clinch after Cannonier gets up, so that way he's going to be able to keep looking for trips and other kinds of takedowns. I think Brunson by decision is probably the most likely outcome. That's currently $250 on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think the second most likely outcome is Cannonier by knockout, which is plus 120 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So technically, if you bet the same dollar amount for both of those bets, you would come out in the positives despite whatever the outcome is if it's one of those two. But for DraftKings, I think there's good value on Blonde Brunson here. So at 7,600, I would recommend it if you needed the salary relief. At 7,400, Tai Tuivasa, he's going to be the much younger fighter against Derrick Lewis. He's probably the better athlete at this point, and he's definitely got a more diverse game. The heavy leg kicks are going to be slapping against Derrick Lewis's stiff legs, and that's going to be on full display for as long as this fight lasts. And like we touched on in the first look, Derrick Lewis hasn't fought the biggest punchers as of late. And you're probably thinking, dude, he fought Francis Ngannou, but we don't talk about that, ever. But guys like Chris Daukaus, Cyril Gane, Curtis Blades, Alexei Olenek, Ira Latifi, these aren't huge punchers. I expect Tuivasa to have success at range and eventually find the knockout when they get into the pocket. And this is heavyweight MMA with two of the biggest punchers in the division, so I don't rule out entirely the possibility of Derrick Lewis knocking Tuivasa out. Very possible. And for the Black Beast, a lot of his fights are situations where he's losing until bink, he lands and it's over. So I want to show respect where it's due, but I still think Tuivasa is worth a shot. At 7,000, if we come down here, Robert Whittaker is easily the most talented fighter in this price range. This fight is closer than the price and the line are indicating. In their first fight, Robert Whittaker was actually a slight favorite. And since then, he's grown as a fighter. He's only 31, which is hard to believe. It feels like we've been watching Robert Whittaker forever, but he's only 31 years old. He's actually the younger fighter here. And he might have a grappling advantage. It's very hard to tell. I think Adesanya has better grappling than what we might give him credit for going against Jan Blachowicz. Weight class up, it's kind of hard to show that. So it's hard to say for sure, but what you can say for sure is that Robert Whittaker is going to be very, very good leverage on DraftKings this week. He's in the main event, so he's still going to see some ownership, but I see a ton of the field playing Adesanya. I believe about 60% of the players in your contest are going to go with Adesanya, no matter what format it is. So if Robert Whittaker wins and you have him, well, he's going to be awesome leverage this week. Truthfully, I expect Israel Adesanya to get the job done. I expect him to win by decision, but can't count out the Reaper. Now, there are a few things I think you need to focus on this week to be successful. First is don't play Israel Adesanya this week. We talked about this in the first look. Now, I personally believe that Adesanya is the best middleweight outside of Anderson Silva that we've ever seen. I think he wins this fight. I think he continues to defend his belt successfully for years to come. that's until Khamzat shows up, and that's a conversation for another day. If you guys ever want to just talk MMA, let me know in the comments. We might do something throughout the week. We're going to start building lineups in a second, but before we do, I think one thing that's going to help you keep your lineups in check is making it so that Carlos Ulberg is the most expensive fighter in your lineup. And the reason why I say that is because, again, a lot of the underdogs in this card don't look great. It's going to be hard for you to call the ones that are going to win. So by making him the most expensive fighter in your lineup, you're doing a really good job of keeping your salary in check, making sure that you're able to open yourself up to that mid-range. Leaving salary on the table this week is a no-go. Normally, I encourage you to leave a little bit of salary on the table just to get different, but with the way this pricing is, I don't think so. I think you need to squeeze out every little bit of salary you can, or come in with $100, $200, $300 remaining. So now let's build some lineups. Let's talk about what our lineup should look like. Okay, so first, again, if we follow the rule of making Carlos Ulberg our most expensive play, we can put him there at 8,900. I really like Bobby Green this week at 8,400. Again, like we talked about in the first look, Nasrat Haqparast is a striker who's not going to have the striking advantage in this spot. I think that Bobby Green's footwork, boxing, and his wrestling, if he decides to go to it, will be too much. I don't think he finishes this fight, but in some of the decisions that he's won, he's scored a decent amount of points. So if we can get around 80, 90, maybe even 100 points from Bobby Green, obviously, that would be really, really nice at 8,400. Renato Moicano, so I see a lot of love for Alex Hernandez, just the power difference, seemingly, that he has over Moicano. But I think Moicano is so much better than Hernandez. I think the line is a lot closer than what this fight actually is. I think Moicano is a much better martial artist, better on the ground. I think he's got better striking technique. Really, the only difference is Hernandez going to be able to land a bomb and knock him out? And I don't think that's the case. But if we have Ulberg, Bobby Green, we plug in Jacob Malkoun, Jared Vanderaa, got 8,400. So again, you're probably going to have to play a lot of these people in the mid-range or some of these dog options that aren't too low. So if you come down to Tuivasa, well, now you've got 9,400 and you can afford Ronnie Lawrence. That looks like a solid lineup. I think that it's just different enough with Malkoun and Vanderaa. And obviously, you're not playing Israel Adesanya, so automatically your lineup's a lot different. Another way you could attack this, if you like Carlos Ulberg and say Derrick Lewis, you can come down here again to Jacob Malkoun. Now we're looking at somebody like, say, Derrick Brunson this time around. We still got 8,300 left to work, so we could come down, grab somebody like Moicano, and then follow that up with Vanderaa. So now you've left 300 salary on the table, which is the most I would recommend leaving. And again, your lineup's pretty different with Vanderaa, Malkoun. Now adding Moicano in there, I think that makes you super different. And if you wanted to, you could totally come up from somebody like Derrick Lewis and get Jeremiah Wells, who might not pull as much ownership as he probably should, because he has a huge mismatch on his hands if the fight hits the mat at any point. But I'll show you what I mean when I talk about playing these more expensive plays. If you're going to play any of them, you really can only play one. Because if you tried to go play, say, Casey O'Neill and Jeremiah Wells, it's going to be really difficult for you to build out the rest of the lineup with things that you feel good about. If you're playing two of the fighters above 9,000, then you're probably going to have to take somebody like Robert Whittaker to give yourself a shot. And outside of Robert Whittaker, you might come up to Blonde Brunson. You could grab Derrick Lewis, and then you can come back to Jacob Malkoun. That's a pretty different lineup. That's a good way for you to be able to play those two. But again, you're going to be playing Robert Whittaker. It's good leverage, but I don't think that he beats Adesanya this week. And I think the chalky lineup, the lineup you'll see the most, I think this is probably what you're going to see a lot of in your lineups that look just like this. And even if you're not playing cash games, I do think you'll see a lot of people coming here and stacking this fight, even in your tournaments. I wouldn't advise doing it in your tournaments, but you will see a lot of that there. And again, I think that Brunson's going to be a pretty popular play down at 7,600. I think that Derrick Lewis, Carlos Ulberg will probably be pretty attractive plays, and then Bobby Green. This is probably chalkier than the last one that we built. This is what you're going to see a lot of in your contests, and honestly, it doesn't look like a bad lineup, especially if you were playing cash. And I'll just wrap up by giving you what I think will happen in each fight. I had somebody ask me to do this for you, so I thought it would be a good idea. Israel Adesanya by decision, Tai Tuivasa by knockout, Derrick Brunson by decision, Tyler Phillips by TKO, Bobby Green by decision, Jared Vanderaa, I'm going to say 3rd round knockout. Casey O'Neill, 2nd round knockout. Alex Perez, 1st round knockout. I'll say Max Grishin by decision. Ronnie Lawrence by decision. Renato Moicano by submission. Carlos Ulberg by knockout. Jacob Malkoun by decision. Sergey Morozov by decision. Jeremiah Wells by submission. Those are my final picks. If you've made it to this point in the video, you're special. I like you. You're going far. You're going places. And as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.